All right, in this lesson, we're going to be talking about special cases whenever we're multiplying polynomials, mainly binomials. So we're going to learn three. The first two that I want to go over with you are shown right here. I'm going to write them kind of my own way just to emphasize and teach while I do it. Okay, so the first one is whenever we have a binomial, let's say A plus B squared. So we have a binomial and it looks like this, A plus B squared. What does that mean? It means we have a binomial multiplied times its, oops, I didn't mean to do that, multiplied times itself. So A plus B times A plus B. They look exactly the same, right? So that's a special case, and I have a shortcut. I don't have to go through and use FOIL method to solve this, okay? So the shortcut is I'm going to use A squared. This is my final answer. A squared plus 2 times A times B, oops, plus B squared. Okay, so that's the formula. Oops, going off like that. So the special case when you have something plus something squared, so this binomial times itself, we don't have to go through and FOIL and simplify. We just say, okay, whatever the first term is, square it. Whatever the last term is, square it. And then in the middle, we just multiply the first term times the last term, and then times 2, right? So let's do an example. If I said, let's say it's x plus 4 squared, right? Which really means x plus 4 times x plus 4. But you don't even have to write it out like that. Once I know this, I have everything I need to know, okay? So remember, it's just the first term squared, the last term squared, and in the middle, I multiply the first times the last times 2, okay? So the first term squared, x squared, the last term squared, 4 squared, and in the middle, I multiply first times last times 2. So 2 times x times 4. And then I'm putting a plus sign here and a plus sign here. I didn't give myself good room. Then I can simplify that, right? So x squared plus 2 times x times 4 is 8x. Plus 4 squared is 16. Right? Let's do one a little bit quicker than that. So if I had, let's say, x plus 2 squared. Right? My answer is going to be the first term squared plus the first times the last times 2. So x times 2, which is 4x, plus the last term squared. 2 squared is 4. Right? First term squared, last term squared, and in the middle, first times last times 2. Okay, so that's our first formula. Our first shortcut. When you have this guy, the answer is this guy. Let me back up a little. Can I do that? Nope, I'm already as far back as I can go. So a plus b squared is equal to a squared plus 2 times ab plus b squared. All right, then the second one we're going to learn is just very similar, okay? And I'm not going to use colors this time. A minus b squared, right? Which is the same thing as a minus b times a minus b. Same thing. So, oh, sorry. So when we have this, our shortcut, you don't even need to see this part, just when you have this, your answer is the first term squared, minus 2 times the first term times the last term, plus the last term squared. Okay, that first rule we just learned, let me write that again right under this real quick. If we had a plus b squared, which is a plus b times a plus b, the answer is the first term squared plus 2 times ab plus the last term squared. So the only difference in these two is if there is a minus sign here, there is a minus sign in the beginning here. If there is a plus sign here, there is a plus sign in the beginning. Everything else is the same. So let's do a couple examples of this guy with the minus sign. So if I had, let's say, x minus, did I do 5 already? X minus 5 squared, right? The answer to that would be the first term squared, the last term squared, 5 times. Now, this minus, when we're working on special cases, this minus sign does not go with the 5. This is like part of the formula that stays, right? All the stuff in black here is just, it always stays. That's part of the rule. If it has a minus sign here, you're looking at the term in front of the minus sign and the term behind the minus sign. Do not keep the minus sign with that b. It's a special case, okay? So when I say the first term squared, I got x squared. The second term squared is positive 5 squared, which is 25. And then in the middle, we multiply first times the second times 2. So x times 5 is 5x, times 2 is 10x. And then when there's a minus sign here, there's a minus sign in front, and then it's always plus behind. Okay, let's do another one. If I had x, oh crap, I didn't mean to do that, x minus 7 squared. First term squared. At the end, 7 squared. In the middle, x times 7 times 2. So that's 14x. And since it has a minus sign here, I'm going to put a minus sign here and a plus sign here, right? If I had a plus sign, if I had x plus 6, first term squared, last term squared, and in the middle, first times last times 2, so 12x. And since there's a plus sign here, there's a plus sign here, and this one's always plus, right? They're all plus, but if this has a minus, the first sign's a minus. If it has a plus, the first sign's a plus. Let's do one more. Let's do if I had 2x plus 3 squared. Okay, so first we have the first term squared. 2x squared is 4x squared, right? 2x times 2x is 4x squared. Then the last term squared is 9. In the middle is the first times the last times 2. 2x times 3 is 6x. 6x times 2 is 12x. And since there's a plus here, and always a plus here. Okay, if I did something like that, let's do 3x minus 2. Now this is a minus one, right? The first term squared, so 3x times 3x, that's 9x squared. The last term squared, 2 times 2 is 4, and the middle is the first times the last times 2. 3x times 2 is 6x, times 2 is 12x. Since there's a minus sign here, there's a minus sign here, and always a plus sign here. I hope you're kind of seeing the pattern, right? For all of these, square the first term, square the last term, the middle is the first times the last times 2. If there's a minus sign here, the first sign's a minus sign. If there's a plus sign, the first sign's a plus sign. And for all of them, the second sign is plus. Okay, so let's do a few more examples of those, and then I'll show you that third special case. Sheets here. Let's see, I'm just going to skip around. Let's do, I already kind of did that one. Let's do 3p plus 4. 3p plus 4. So we're going to do the first term squared, 3p squared, plus, in the middle, first times last times 2. So 2 times 3p times 4 plus the last term squared. Oh, well, I meant to write 4 squared. I went ahead and squared it and made it 16. So 3p squared is 9p squared plus 2 times 3p is 6p. 6p times 4 is 24p plus 16. So this is my final answer. 9p squared plus 24p plus 16. Okay, let's do this guy. I'm going to kind of write over this little area, so we'll scramble this out. Okay, first term squared, 4x squared. not plus, minus first times last times 2. So 2 times 4x times 5. Remember, the minus sign doesn't go with the 5 here. This is a special case. And then plus the last term squared. Plus, oh, I didn't know you couldn't see any of that, sorry. First term squared minus 2 times the first term times the last term plus the last term squared. 5 squared. And then we simplify. 4x squared means 4x times 4x, which is 16x squared, minus 2 times 4x is 8x. 8x times 5 is 40x plus 25. So the first term squared minus 2 times the first times the last plus the last term squared. Let's do 8y plus 4. First, here, I won't use this. First term squared. At the end is this last term squared. And in the middle is where we do first times last times 2. So 2 times 8y times 4. And we put a plus here, and since there's a plus here, we put a plus in front. Then I simplify. 8y squared is 64y squared plus 2 times 8 is 16. 16 times 4 is 64y plus 16. First term squared, last term squared, and in the middle, first times last times 2. Okay, and let's do one more that's minus. Let's do this guy right here. First term squared, m squared squared, minus 2 times the first term times the last term, m squared times 2, plus the last term squared, 2 squared. Sorry. First term squared, first term is m squared, and then you have to square it, minus this times 2, 2 times n squared times 2, plus the last term squared. And remember, the last term does not include the minus sign, it's just by itself. The minus sign stays with the formula. The 2 is the thing we're looking at. Okay, then we simplify. M squared to the 4th, let's get rid of this, is m to the 4th, or sorry, m squared squared is m to the 4th, minus 2 times m squared times 2 is 4m squared, plus 2 squared is 4. So there's our answer. Okay, if you have questions on that, let me know. Then we have one more special case formula. And let me show you here where we were working on these before. Remember, we have our 2 special case formulas. So if it's a minus, it looks like this. If it's a plus, it looks like this. Well, what if it's not both? What if it's instead of a minus b times a minus b or a plus b times a plus b, what if it's a minus b times a plus b? So they both have the same terms in the front and the back, but one has a plus sign and one has a minus sign. Is that a special case? Absolutely. Let me show you. So if I have, can you see it over here? A plus b times a minus b, the answer is going to be the first term squared minus the second term squared. You're done, right? Let me show you how that works. So, for example, if I had x plus, I don't know, 8 times x minus 8, right? If I was actually going to solve that, not use the shortcut, but if I was just going to FOIL this and solve it, I would do FOIL, first, outer, inner, last. First times first is x squared. Outer, x times negative 8 is negative 8x. Inner, 8 times x is positive 8x. And then last, 8 times negative 8 is negative 64. And then when I start to simplify this, if you notice, those middle terms match. One's negative, one's positive, so that means they just cancel each other out. So I end up being left with x squared minus 64. X was my first term and I squared it. 64 is the second term and I squared it, right? Just the 8. I squared the 8, I got 64. And since one's plus and one's minus, I put a minus sign in the middle for my answer. Okay? So it ends up, the middle term ends up canceling out. So all you're going to do when you see this kind of problem is square the first term, square the last term, put a minus sign in between. Okay, so let's do another one. Let's do 2x plus 2 times 2x minus 2. Okay, so I'm going to square the first term, square the last term. 2x squared means 2x times 2x, that's 4x squared. 2 squared is 4, and I put a minus sign in between. How do I know that's right? Well, 2x times 2x is 4x squared. 2x times negative 2 is negative 4x. 2x times positive 2 is positive 4x. And 2 times negative 2 is negative 4. Negative 4x and positive 4x cancel each other out. So I'm left with 4x squared minus 4. Okay? So whenever you have this problem, this is your answer. It's the shortest answer. It's the only answer that you get a binomial, right? Any other time you multiply two binomials, you get a trinomial. But when you multiply this special case, the middle term cancels itself out. So you end up with just two terms. So let's do a few of these on a worksheet. Let's do, I'm going to do this one, this one, this one, and this guy. Okay, we'll do 4. All right, number 2. This is p plus 2 times p minus 2. They both have a p, they both have a 2. The only thing different is one has a plus, one has a minus. So this is my special case answer that looks like that. So it's the first term squared, p squared, the last term squared, 4, and then since there's a plus and a minus, I put a minus sign in between. Done. Done. That's it. I don't have to do anything else. It's a shortcut. I could still use FOIL method, but then that would be a lot more solving, and I'd end up canceling out my middle term. So I'm just going to use the shortcut. All right. Y minus 4x, y plus 4x. They have the same terms. Just one has a minus sign, one has a plus. So I'm going to square the first term, y squared. I'm going to square the second term. 4x squared is going to give me 16x squared because it means 4x times 4x. And since there's a minus and a plus, I put a minus sign here. It doesn't matter which comes first. If this was plus and this were minus or vice versa, it doesn't matter. The answer is still the same. Okay, number 12. 3a minus 2b, 3a plus 2b. Same terms, one has a plus, one has a minus. So I'm going to square the first term, 3a squared. I'm going to square the last term, 2b squared, and I'm going to put a minus sign between them. So 3a times 3a is 9a squared. 2b times 2b is 4b squared. So that's my answer, 9a squared minus 4b squared. Last one, this guy. Now there's extra exponents in here, so you just have to follow your rules of exponents. So I've got h squared minus k squared, h squared plus k squared. So I've got a plus and a minus, that's the only difference. So I'm going to square the first term, h squared squared. I'm going to square the last term, k squared squared, and I'm going to put a minus sign between them. So h squared squared, remember when you raise an exponent to another exponent, you multiply the exponents together, h to the 4th minus k to the 4th. That's the answer. You're done. Okay, hopefully those make sense. Let me write those down one more time for you, this last little time. So we have a plus b squared. The answer is always the first term squared plus the first term times the second term times 2 plus the last term squared. If you have a minus b squared, a squared minus 2ab plus b squared. And if you have a plus b times a minus b, a squared minus b squared. These are your 4 exceptions. Sorry, 3 exceptions. 1, 2, 3 exception rules. A plus b times a plus b, a minus b times a minus b, a plus b times a minus b. And the a's and the b's don't just stand for any number. This isn't saying anything with a plus sign times anything with a plus sign. It has to be the same 2 terms. right? Like we're not saying like x plus 3 times x plus 4. It would have to be x plus 3 times x plus 3, or x minus 7 times x minus 7, or x plus 2 times x minus 2. The terms have to be the same. Okay, let me know if you have questions on that. Write this down. This is your shortcut. Write it down, use it.